Hi, we are the Sports Junkies, sports talk show, and we got a great show coming up again. We're going to talk, this time it's time to talk Giants baseball. And guys, you know, it was a little disappointing this year. I mean, you know, coming off it was still a fun season for a while, but coming off the World Series victory, I think everybody expected a lot more. The Giants had a great run last year, won the division on the last game of the season, of course, and then, you know, beat every game in the playoffs against the Braves, one-run game. Beat the Phillies, beat the Rangers to win the World Series. And it was just, you know, Giants baseball was the highlight of everything for most of the summer. This year, they're a little different. You know, Giants basically just got eliminated. We will not be returning to the playoffs this year, unfortunately. But I think we got to give the Giants credit for at least being in it. With all the injuries they had, at least being in it for this long.
Sure.
They pretty much went into the final weekend of the final weekend of the regular season. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's I think for a team that had this many injuries, to be in it that long, especially with the lack of offense, which we'll get into, it's at least encouraging. Of course, you want to repeat with another playoff run. But it's encouraging at least that we were in it. We didn't play a meaningless game until the very end, basically, is what I'm saying.
Well, you also have to factor in that this team is a much different team right now than if you had either Buster Posey or Freddie Sanchez.
Right.
Those injuries caused moves that you wouldn't have had to make earlier. You wouldn't have needed a big-time Carlos Beltran bat if you still had Buster Posey in the lineup. You wouldn't have needed, per se, both Orlando Cabrera or Jeff Keppinger if you had Freddie Sanchez playing second base every day.
Right.
So you cannot talk about this team's offensive struggles without mentioning in the foreground or just taking it as a known fact that this team is a much different team now than what it should be had it been even just a little less injured.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, I mean,
you should also mention Tejada was a bust.
Right.
Yes.
You didn't make a good acquisition in Tejada.
No.
The Giants relied too much on their guys last year. You know, you don't want to break what you had going last year. You had a great team last year.
Well, I couldn't believe they let Uribe go.
Well, again, that
guy. Every time he came up to bat, you knew it could be a home run.
Did you see Uribe's season this year? He had
He was
4
horrible.
home runs.
He was
He's
horrible
already
in
out
LA.
for the year.
He was horrible.
So
well,
it's just
unlike the Warriors, players get worse when they leave the Giants.
Yeah, right. But it's the same with Jason Schmidt, right? He leaves the Giants, he goes to LA, he turns into he just is injured for the rest of his career.
Who was that guy?
It's the Giants to Dodgers curse. Apparently.
I'm still surprised when they tell me about how good Jason Schmidt was when he was on the Giants, because all I remember over the legacy of his career was so-so. But he was really good with the Giants.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
But the Giants now have to look, what are they going to do this season? What are they going to do after this season going into next? You have a list of guys that are
absolutely,
gone.
And we're gonna play a great game called Love 'Em and Leave 'Em, where we're gonna basically look at each Giants free agent coming up, and we'll play Love 'Em, which means keep them, or Leave them, which means, you know, get out of Dodge. You know, basically, you're out of here, in our opinion, anyway. And we'll do that. But before we do that, Ben, let me ask you. Coming into the season, and you know, it's always been. I've noticed this since I noticed what the Angels did after they won the World Series in 2002. When you go into an offseason after you've won a championship, it's important, I think, to realize that every year is different, which means you got to make moves to change, you know, because every year is going to be different.
Yep.
So this team, basically, they didn't do anything. I mean, you just talked about with Tejada. I mean, they lost Uribe, they lost Uribe, so they signed Tejada, and that was basically it. Everyone else was back. Were you concerned coming into the season about the lack of moves in the offseason, even though it was fun because most of the World Series team was coming back?
You know, I was, because as much as I'll say, you know, pitching is more important than hitting in baseball, you know, they're pretty close, and obviously the Giants had a gaping hole all over the lineup. You had Buster Posey look solid. You had Pablo who looked solid, and we didn't even know before the season if he was going to be able to become the old Pablo, and he did, thankfully. But the two of those aren't enough. And, you know, sure, Aubrey Huff had a great season, but he hadn't been doing that over the course of his career.
Okay.
You know, he wasn't the same hitter, and, you know, Burrell's not always, you know, some weeks he'd be on fire, and other weeks he'd be really bad. So I think they had a lot of holes to address, and if you looked all across the outfield, there wasn't really one power hitter there. And you can't just go into opening day and say, oh, well, Scherholtz is probably going to hit 30 home runs this year, so no big deal. I mean, chances are he's not going to. And Torres, he's a great speedy leadoff hitter, but you need some power somewhere, and Burrell wasn't really the answer and left.
Although Burrell was hot that first week. He
Sure.
had like 5 home runs the first week of the season, and then he just completely fell off.
But we all know that's
Yeah,
Burrow.
he got hurt too. Yeah.
But the thing that the Giants need to look at your guys. Who do you need to keep? Guillermo Mota, you need to keep him. He's such a valuable guy on this team because if any pitcher at any point is struggling or gets hurt, you need a guy like Mota who's just consistent.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's an excellent point. With Mota, you got a guy who, generally in his career, when with LA, he was a Dodger, he was a Met, he was a Marlin. He was basically known as a setup guy, at least to most of it. I think comes over to the Giants, he's doing long relief spots. Was he a spot? Did he could have spot started.
He never spot started.
I think he was going to at one point, but then they called up Surkamp or something. So he could have spot started. He did long relief, mop-up duty, setup. This guy was doing everything at one point, and he's really. But we all know that the pitching is not the problem with this team. This team is going to be competitive as long as they have that pitching staff.
They could have, a few more holes in the pitching staff, and they'd still be fine.
Right. Well, okay, Ben, you were comparing, with a couple of guys like Huff with last year, with 2010 and this year. Alex, you and I had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. Let me ask you this. Looking at, basically, we had the same guy, a lot of the same guys coming off the World Series team. Last year, they did it. They came up with the clutch hits. They were able to get, they weren't a great hitting team last year either, but they got the hits where they needed to. This year, it seemed like everyone tanked. So what do you think, I guess I want to say, is the real Giants? Last year or the way they were this year, offensively? I
think that this year is more realistic for the guys. Now, again, there's some guys that will play well. You're going to have Pablo playing well, Buster playing well, Freddie playing well, when they're there, when they're healthy. It's just some of these guys that, were so great last year. Burrow was phenomenal for the Giants last year. Huff, just otherworldly. Uribe, Cody Ross in the playoffs, Some of these guys, you're looking at them like, these guys?
Yeah.
Where did they come from? Since when are they this good?
Oh, yeah.
Edgar Renteria. He was basically cast off from the team until September when Bochy decides, well, I don't like how Pablo's playing at third. I'll move Uribe to third, put Renteria at short, and see if the veterans take me. And Renteria ends up becoming a Giant legend.
Yeah.
So it's just, the question now becomes, now that you've seen both sides of the story, who do you keep?
Right. He really wants to play 11 and leave him now.
I think, over the course of the season, you look at last season, the World Series run, they're normally a great, outstanding pitching team, an awful hitting team, and then come just the right time, they happen to kind of get lucky and become an average hitting team, and that was enough to put them over the top and win the World Series.
And
the pitching was that strong.
The pitching was good enough to win you 2-1, 1-0 games, 3-2 games. Other than the first 2 games that we played against Texas, I don't think we scored more than 5 runs in a game during the playoffs. Yeah. We scored 20 at home in the 2 games against Texas, and the other games, maybe Game 4 against Philadelphia is the one game where I could think of where we could have scored runs.
Even the clincher in Game 6, we only scored 3.
Right. This team was not an offensive team. They just had enough offense. And now this year, when they've needed enough, they haven't been able to get that.
Right. Okay, well, let me ask you guys this. Let's look at this season for a second. I think a lot of fans started getting frustrated with, guys like Huff not performing. Huff had a horrible season this year. And the guys who were there last year, and basically a lot of guys, let's face it, played themselves out of a job. Meanwhile, you had the younger guys like Belt, like Brett Pill. You had these guys coming up. A lot of people were wondering, well, why is Bochy continuing to play the veterans? Yeah, we won the World Series with them last year. Yes, we understand that. But at the same time, they're not doing it this year. Each year is different, and these guys are playing themselves out of a job. Basically, guys like Tejada, guys like Rowan, they ended up dumping both Tejada and Rowan. But guys like Aubrey Huff pretty much played himself out of a job. Why did they keep running? Why did Bochy keep running him out there and not giving Brandon Belt more time?
Most of the offensive problems were in the middle infield. And, those guys you listed off can't play those positions. Huff, yeah, that's a big question mark right there. But it's tough to just cast off Huff, but I did not mean to make that rhyme. But
you also you also must, if you're talking offensive issues at all for the Giants, you must throw in the fact that there is a very, very, very significant difference between having Eli Whiteside and Chris Stewart splitting your offensive duties every day as a catcher versus Buster Posey.
Yeah.
Because those guys, and I heard Marty Lurie on KMBR radio say this at one point, you almost had 6.5 hitters and the other 2.5, because every now and then Crawford or whoever was playing short could get a hit. Right. You had 2.5 sure outs every time.
Yeah.
And you can't live in a season with maybe 6 guys in your lineup that could produce.
Right. Well, this was the reason I brought up Belt. This was a big article in the Chronicle the other day. Do you think the Giants mishandled Brandon Belt? Because he started. He was going to be the lead, he was going to be the starting first baseman coming into the year, and then he got he didn't play. He got sent down, got called back up, got hurt, got sent back down. They kind of they didn't really. It seems like they didn't really give him a shot.
Well, put it this way, I don't think he's going to hit 30 home runs for the next year or two. He just doesn't seem to be that type of hitter, at least yet. And, when the only thing he really had going was a solid batting average and that went way south, it kind of made sense to take him down.
And you also have to you may have mishandled him, but at the same time, you had no other choice at the time. You weren't going to, Well,
what about benching Huff and letting Belt get more at-bats at first?
I think it made sense to give Huff a little more time.
Because you're just trying to you are hoping that Huff, being a veteran, has a hot streak in him. It never came. Yep. Last year, other teams were hoping he had a cold streak in him. It never came. So, again, as they say in baseball, the law of averages will play out eventually. And last year, with as an amazing as a season it has, even with the pitching staying consistent over the past 2 years, that hitting dips like it did at the end of this year. Yeah. You'll have a difference in a season. Okay, well, here's one. I know you, Alex, you and I enjoyed discussing this point. I'm going to throw it to Ben first, though. Ben, I brought this up with you earlier. For this year, what do you think for you? What was the turning point of the season where you thought, okay, this may not happen. This is just not. This isn't. What was. Because I'm going to say the popular choice. I know what everyone's thinking watching this is Buster Posey went down. Obviously, that was huge. But to me, we were in first place for 2.5 months after Posey went down. So I will make that argument. Ben, go ahead. What was the turning point?
I mean, if you have to pick a turning point, then that's what I would say it is. The truth is, Posey or no Posey, the hitting was never really there, not all the way around. And I just think that it was a huge demoralizing blow to everybody. He's just the kind of player that brings a sort of vibe to the clubhouse that makes you feel like you can come out and win every time, even when the cards are stacked against you. And I think the pitchers really probably vibe a lot better off of him than Stewart and Whiteside. Not that those guys, anything wrong with them, but Posey's the kind of guy that you look forward to pitching to every day and working with. So
my thing was just like with the whole Posey issue was that, the pitchers, you talk about they were better working with Posey than Whiteside or Stewart. The pitching was fine.
Yeah.
All year. I mean, you can't say, oh, well, they slumped because Posey wasn't there. The pitching never slumped.
I guess more so the point is the guys in the batting order. Maybe, I got Posey hitting in front of me. I got a little more protection now. Or, I can't figure out this pitcher. I can go ask Buster what to do. And I guess, when he's around the clubhouse and not playing, you can still do the same thing. But I don't know. It seems like it's not quite the same.
Yeah. Okay. Alex?
Elimination day. A team's never over till it's over.
You're right.
When the Giants get eliminated, unfortunately, that's when I gave up.
That's that, and we learned that last year. Last day of the season, we clinched that.
But we learned that last year because that almost happened to us.
Right. Exactly. That's my point. Exactly. Well, okay. To me, there could be a couple of turning points. I think a big one, honestly, because I was worried. When we were in first place, the one thing I was worried about because we weren't hitting was if we drop out of first, because the D-backs were playing really well. They played really well all season, and they showed no signs. Basically, they slowed down a little when they played the Phillies and the Braves. But basically, other than that, they didn't slow down. So my thing was, if we drop out of first, are we going to be able to get it back? So to me, our big opportunity, even if we dropped out of first, was that, and I said this to you earlier, Ben, was that long road trip when we went to Florida, which I think we took 2 out of 3, Florida, Atlanta, and Houston. Because even though, like I know, you'll probably say, Alex, after that road trip, we came home only a game out. But still, if you look at that road trip, we lost a lot of close games. A lot of games where one hit, we would have won. One clutch hit. And meanwhile, the D-backs were getting beaten up by the Phillies and the Braves. So to me, that was kind of our shot to say, hey, we're gonna get back into first place. and we weren't able to do it.
Well, if you are going to put that comparison out there, and sorry about that, Ben, but
No.
you have to factor in that we had a 10-game homestand, including 3 against the Diamondbacks, 4 against the Phillies, and 3 against the Pirates. And the Pirates were ice cold at the time. And we were red hot at home. That, in my opinion, if you're looking at a turning point, that's the turning point in the season when you have this long homestand at home against the teams you need to beat, and you go 3-7 on the homestand.
Yeah.
You cannot do that if you're trying to be competitive,
right.
especially at home.
Right.
You need it at home
Yeah.
at least stay split or go above 500.
Well, I agree. I mean, I remember we were at that last game against the Diamondbacks, and when Vogelsong pitched that 1-0 game for 8 innings, and then he walked, taking the bullpen, gave it up. And it's just like I said that's the ball game, and we both looked at each other like maybe obviously they were still in it, but we both had the thought, neither of us wanted to say it, but we both had the thought that might be it.
You're referring to a totally different game than I was mentioning, but yes, at the same time,
Yeah,
that was
it was the Diamondbacks. Yeah, okay. We got off course, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead, Ben.
The hitting just completely fell out there. You can't expect the relief pitchers to never give up a run. The hitting made it hard on everybody.
No, absolutely.
including themselves.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Well,
Okay, well, let's look ahead to the offseason. Let's play love them or leave them. All right, we're going to look at each, and we'll look at each unrestricted free agent. We'll look at a couple of the arbitration guys, too. But let's start with the unrestricted free agents. Let's start with Ross the Boss. Cody Ross, big playoff hero from last year. It's his first run in free agency. He may want to test the waters. What do you do with Cody Ross if you're the Giants?
You're asking me. Unless you're planning to make him your 4th or 5th outfielder, you've got to try to let him go.
You got to leave him out there. I mean, he isn't consistent enough. He doesn't have a big enough bat. He isn't a big enough defensive guy. And you don't have a spot really for him because you throw him around to different places. You need to be doing something different every game. You wouldn't be starting him every day, especially if you keep a guy like Torres, as a guy in center field. You don't have a spot for Ross. I say leave him, especially if he's unrestricted.
You got to try to bring in a power bat in the outfield for once. It's been a long enough.
That's the thing. I mean, I'm thinking from 2 point of views here because one, me as the super diehard Giants fan, loves Cody for what he did last year. And so I'm like, come on, let's give him another shot. But at the same time, you guys are right. I mean, it's a different season. He didn't perform. He did great in the postseason last year, but he's not really that player. He got on a hot streak.
And if you look throughout baseball, you can look at 4 key guys who are young outfielders that play, in the positions that you need that you can pick up. You have Rick Ankiel, only 32. Grady Sizemore, if they don't pick up the option in Cleveland, which I think they're getting a little tired of all the injuries, and I think they might let him test the waters and then realize he should come back. There's David DeJesus if Oakland doesn't sign, and then from Minnesota, Jason Kubel, who I have heard every right that he wants to take off. Any 4 of those guys, if you just get one of them, they provide enough of a bat and enough of a stability that it's huge.
And you're right, and you mentioned DeJesus. That's a guy, we all know the Giants like him. They almost got him at the trading deadline last year, except he got hurt. But I think there was a deal in place to get David DeJesus at the deadline last year, but he got hurt, so he was off the table, and we ended up getting Lopez and Ramirez, which, hey, that was a pretty good move.
Speaking of
out of those 4, my favorite is Kubel.
Right. Kubel's only 29, to throw that in.
Looks like Turtle from Entourage. and you have to look at those power stats and say he was doing those in the pitcher's park in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely capable of being a left-handed bat that can take it opposite field to left and even hitting a few splash hits.
And
okay,
hit that.
well, let's go ahead.
Can we focus on 3 guys that are unrestricted right now?
Sure.
One of them is a club option in Affeldt, the 3 relief pitchers that are free agents. Okay. Affeldt has a club option from the team going into this year.
$5 million option.
With a $500,000 buyout, I believe.
Okay.
Lopez is an unrestricted and Mote is an unrestricted. I think you only keep one of the 2 lefties. I think that if they kept somebody, it has to be Lopez. Because Lopez you have to keep a guy like that. He's such a shutdown guy. He can pitch against righties. They trust him so much against lefties, they want to just save him. And with all the big lefties throughout, not just the NL West, but just in the NL, NL West specifically, Ethier, Loney for the Dodgers. You have mainly Cargo, but also Helton in Colorado. San Diego,
Yeah, here's
depending.
another thing.
Right,
You
yeah.
can't count on Colorado not playing as well as. I mean, they should have played better this year. That's a good team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you always expect the Rockies to make a push in August and September. They didn't do it this year, but you usually expect
Don't be
it.
surprised if they bounce back next year.
Oh, I definitely would.
So I say Lopez is a yes. You keep him. You keep Mota, as I mentioned earlier. You got to get rid of Affelt. Too much money. If he's willing to take a pay cut and maybe come back for less
money.
than the $5 million that he would have with the option, maybe for $2 million, $2.5 million, I could see it. But I think they have enough guys in the bullpen in the minors that are very legitimate that they could live without Affelt.
Right, and Affelt, I mean, as great as Affelt has been for the Giants, I mean, his top year was his first year back in 2009. I mean, he won setup man of the year for the Giants. It was going to take me a while to get that out.
Set up the
This is why the Sports Junkies is fun, folks.
Yeah, it is. The blooper reel coming up next. I'm doing it again. He was a big postseason hero last year. He was the setup man of the year in 2009, but he really hasn't come close to that, having that season again since 2009. And then at the end of this year, he cuts his hand trying to separate 2 frozen hamburger patties at a barbecue or something.
That's just not a very solid injury to have on your record.
No, it isn't. And I think Alex is right. I think if you're going to keep one of the lefties, you definitely keep Lopez. I mean, Lopez has proven himself to be, invaluable to this bullpen. I mean, I think Ben, you're out of a lot of Giants games, just as me and Alex are, or is it Alex and I? But that when he's out, when Lopez comes into a game, okay, we're probably going to get out of this inning.
Yeah,
sure.
Or okay, the inning's over. We're going back to the dugout in just a minute. Lopez is coming in.
And then again, just looking at the market per se, there's also 2 lefties available in both John Gerbeau and Mike Gonzalez that if they get free, those are some solid shutdown lefties.
Those guys are both pretty good.
Plus, if you're looking for a guy to be a setup man, if you're planning on keeping Wilson, or even there's a chance the Giants can get Wilson. I've heard these rumors.
Yeah, he brought this up to me at the ballpark a couple of weeks ago.
It's a legitimate thought. You have a closer in Santiago Casilla. You have a setup guy in Sergio Romo. Wilson's a highly touted guy right now across just for his marketing.
Well,
you could get a big name hitter for him. There's that possibility.
I mean, this isn't going to happen, but I remember you even mentioning. You asked me if you could. I remember this is how you put it. You asked me if you could trade Wilson for Votto straight up, would you do it?
I would do it in a heartbeat.
As much as I love
No one's
Brian
going to
Wilson,
take that.
The Reds wouldn't do it. The Reds
say?
wouldn't split with
The Reds
Votto.
wouldn't do it.
But
We're just saying if you could.
If you can get a,
No one would do that.
if you can get an,
We know.
if you can get a B+ hitter at a position you need, if you get a B+ hitter in left field for Wilson,
Yeah, it's a
then
different story.
that's huge.
Votto's an
You
A+.
have to take
And
it.
Romo can close. I mean, much as we all love Brian, Wilson. Don't get us wrong. We all are huge Fear the Beard fans.
Well, he's a
But-
top flight closer, and there's
Right.
not that many.
That's
I
the
mean,
point.
to me, the top 2 closers in the National League right now are Wilson and Heath Bell. And
Right.
Greg Kimbrell's getting up there, but he's a rookie.
But
God, he was
at the
good this year
same-
for a
At the
rookie.
same
Holy cow.
time, the Giants organization has the top closer in the majors, one of the top, but they have the top closer in AAA and the top closer in AA.
Yeah.
And they'll never get a shot with Wilson there, but they have the talent that if you get rid of
And
those guys
Romo-
or let them go in the Rule 5,
And Romo
that could
can
come back
close
to
too.
hurt.
I mean, Romo's scary because when he hangs that slider, the ball goes 480 feet. But when he's on, he is dominant. Romo can be absolutely dominant. So
Big
he-
Romo fan.
Yeah, he can possibly close too. Okay, so we all agree. Ross is gone. Affelt's probably gone. We keep Lopez and Mota.
Well, Affelt, again, we're not saying they should just close the door on him. They should
him
not
back for less.
accept. They should not accept his option, and then look and see if he wants to come back for less money.
Okay, all right, and we also agreed Cody Ross is gone, right?
Cody Ross gone. Pretty sure that it's all. We can
Mark
all agree.
DeRosa.
We can. DeRosa is interesting because he's a veteran leader. He's very versatile. You can
I heard
use
he
him
was
in
huge in the clubhouse even when he was hurt last year.
And he could still hit. He's hitting better when he's not trying to hit home runs as he is recently than he is when he's been trying to be a home run hitter. And maybe he doesn't want to stay as far away from his Atlanta home, which is a key. But he could still play somewhere, especially here.
But the thing with DeRosa is, I think part of the reason we got him is because of his versatility, and then we tried playing him in the middle infield, and he doesn't have very good range anymore.
No,
of all the
but
injuries
you could still play him in left if you need him to. You can still play him at
he's a
third as
backup outfielder.
Right, but you still have him for versatility.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
I think it depends on how much we're paying him. I wouldn't want to pay more than $1 million or $2 million a year for him.
I think we can all agree Cabrera's gone.
If you can get a better option at shortstop, I know there are a few shortstops available.
Well,
Jimmy
the big
Rollins
ones
is available.
Jimmy Rollins and Jose Reyes
he's
are the
local,
big two.
which is why
they have a shot.
They have a shot because he's local.
That'd be cool.
Rollins is local.
I'd really like Rollins.
I really think that Burrell has to retire with his foot because that's not
Agreed.
an injury that you can play for 162 games.
Agreed.
You look, that leaves one name on the table, Carlos Beltran. What do you do with Beltran?
Wow.
What do you do with Beltran? Because you can't bring Beltran back as right fielder. That's Nate Schultz's spot. We've seen how incapable he is of playing right field at AT&T Park for 81, just for 20-something games.
And I said it to you when we first got him. I could not believe the Giants I could not believe the Giants were saying, okay, Beltran, if you want to play right field. I was like, what are you doing? A guy that may only be here for 2 months, you're making Scherholz, who's the best defensive right fielder at that ballpark, sit down for a guy who's only going to be here 2 months? That's not fair. To me, it wasn't fair. I mean, I wanted the bat, but it wasn't fair to me, to Scherholz. So I think Alex is right. Put him in left field.
That's if you want to pay him.
If you want to keep him.
And he is such an expensive guy. What did you think, Ben?
I mean, how much are they paying? Do you?
Well, right now his contract for a year is $18.5 million.
18.5 for 1 year.
For 1 year.
That's too much.
That's way too much to keep him at that. But with Boris, you never know what Boris wants,
That's
and
the wild card,
especially with how many years he's gonna want.
I'd almost drop Beltran just to get rid of Boris.
Yeah, really? Well, yeah. Okay,
and the Giants have a history of keeping players or even trading for players that are past their prime. And Beltran, while he's still a great hitter, I don't think he's going to hit 35 or 40 home runs next year.
So you're saying leave him? I say leave him.
Yeah. For that much money.
Leave him. If you can get a better, leave him.
Oh, if he'd come back for $5 million, I'd take him.
Part of me wants to say keep him, but hey, we got to wrap this up. But I think the Giants, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think they know they got decisions to make, moves they're going to have to make to improve this offense. But I will say this: I think we all agree, as long as they have the pitching, they're going to be in this race. And they will be in it as long as they have this good pitching. And so,
if they can get into the playoffs with the type of pitching they have to be
dangerous.
the favorites to win the World Series. I will say that. This team gets into the playoffs with the pitching, they're the favorites, no matter who's in either league.
But you got to score more than 5 runs a month or whatever they've been averaging.
That's true.
I think we all agree with that one, yes. All right, this was our Giants pre-hot stove league. Obviously, once the offseason is in full gear and the Giants start making moves, we'll talk about it some more. But that was our Giants pre-hot stove league preview, I guess you can call it. And we are the Sports Junkies, Thomas Bookwalter, Alex Simon, Ben Baker, and we'll see you guys next time.